10 years ago, parkour was absolutely massive. You'd see it in films all the time, television, video games, it was everywhere. I would even go as far as to say it was mainstream.
If you went to any big town in the UK like London or Brighton, there was a good chance you'd probably see some freerunners. But over the last 10 years, parkour took a bit of a dip. And I've worked out 3 reasons why I think parkour isn't mainstream yet. Culture, competition, and accessibility.
So in today's video, we're going to go through why parkour isn't mainstream.
The idea of parkour being mainstream has always been met with a little bit of animosity in the world of parkour. There's a certain kind of preciousness that exists in underground sports, especially in the early community. People often view the early days of a sport as like the golden era, where it was its purest. And as time goes past and more people get into the sport, you often find the old heads get a little bit precious about their sport. And this has certainly been the case in the world of parkour. I remember when I first started parkour and the idea of like a parkour clothing brand was seen as taboo. The mere thought of money in parkour would rile some people up. And originally I never really understood why. To me, having money in the sport brings more opportunities, more people being able to live off the sport, and thus the sport would get bigger. But that right there was the problem. A lot of the old school freerunners didn't want parkour to be bigger because at the time it was their thing, it was their baby. It was the safe haven for weirdos and eccentrics. And the mere thought of seeing a trendy kid from school doing parkour would fill these old school freerunners with rage. But as time has passed, that attitude, for the most part, is kind of dead. Most people these days want parkour to be massive. They want big parkour competitions.
They want for parkour and all the amazing things it's taught them to be shared with more people.
So, what's holding parkour back? Before we go on, a massive thank you to Vite Ramen for sponsoring today's video. If you've been here for a while, you'll know Vite Ramen have been a long-time sponsor of the channel, and for good reason, because they make delicious, amazing ramen noodles. These things are so quick and easy to make. They are perfect when I've come back from a day training, or if I'm spending all day sitting and editing and I can't be bothered to cook something. These things are perfect because they are packed full of protein and they make up to 25% of your daily values of vitamins and minerals. My personal favourite is the pork flavour, so if you want to go and pick some up and support my channel by doing so,
use the link below for 10% off.
Anyway, back to the video. Well, if we start off with parkour as a culture, what I mean by that is the lifestyle of being a freerunner. Parkour's culture has never really spread any further than parkour. If you look at skateboarding, you can see the influence of skate culture everywhere. Skate brands like Thrasher, Vans, Supreme are hardly what you could call a skate brand these days. Nowadays, skate fashion is just mainstream fashion. Like, I'd be willing to bet that there's a good chunk of people who wear Vans shoes who have no idea that Vans is a skate brand. Whereas if you tried to ask the average person of a parkour brand, they're probably gonna look at you confused. And then on top of fashion, when it comes to personalities, famous freerunners aren't exactly household names. If you ask your mum to name you a famous freerunner, there's very little chance they're gonna know who any are. Whereas if you asked your nan who a famous skateboarder is, they'll probably be able to at least tell you Tony Hawk's. Parkour at the moment just has very few big personalities that are known outside of the world of parkour. Stora are probably the closest thing we have to celebrities, and that's in large part because they massively blew up on YouTube. But for some reason, the world of parkour on YouTube has been totally overlooked by most of the parkour world. But anyway, I could bang on about how more people should be doing YouTube for a very long time, but there's much more to culture than just social media.
I mentioned a moment ago about skateboarding. Now, skateboarding is going to be very important in this video because skateboarding is another action sport. An action sport that in the early days was seen as crazy, ridiculous, and something you wouldn't want your kids doing. But skateboarding has become massive. And not simply because riding around on a skateboard is fun, but actually, more specifically, because the culture of skateboarding is so rich. Being a skater kid is an image. It's a way of dressing, there's a type of music they listen to, there's a whole culture and lifestyle attached to skateboarding. A culture that is cool and that people in the mainstream world gravitate towards. There are tons of great documentaries about the phenomena of skate culture and how it has taken over mainstream culture. Dogtown and the Z-Boys and Bones Brigade come to mind. So how did skateboarding become what it is today?
All throughout the 2000s, there were endless MTV shows about skateboarding and its culture. There were too many to name, but one of the most notorious was, of course, Jackass.
I was just trying to make rad skate videos, and I was okay at skateboarding, but even back then, I knew the best footage was of me slamming.
With their amazing stunts and hilarious personalities, Jackass managed to blow up, and with it, bought the world of skateboarding. To be a skateboarder became the cool thing to be. Everyone had a skateboard. Whether they could really skate or not wasn't the point. It was the culture of skateboarding that gripped the world. Now, parkour did almost have that same effect. When parkour first came around, there was loads of hype.
A new high-risk sporting discipline is gaining momentum in Sydney, parkour. It looks dangerous.
For a good few years, every school kid was trying to be a freerunner. They'd probably seen the film Casino Royale or maybe Jump London, Jump Britain, and parkour for a very brief moment became the cool thing. But unfortunately, as is the nature for any fad, it didn't last very long.
Wow.
But more than just Jackass, skateboarding's appearance in media is very common. In the 90s, you would always see it in films, but even throughout the 2000s, there have been films made specifically about skateboarding culture. There was a film called Kids, and even recently, a film called Mid-90s. Mid-90s was written and directed by Jonah Hill, who is a massive well-known actor. Jonah Hill collaborated with a pretty underground skate brand called Illegal Civilizations. And it's things like that. Jonah Hill, a massive name in films, who also happens to love skate culture.
I'm here in sunny London, and right now I'm doing what I always do when I'm here, rolling through the Palace store and just chilling.
It was only a few years ago when Jonah Hill appeared in an advert for Palace skateboards, which is kind of insane.
By the store, you know, just to hang, say what's up to the skateboarders.
Jonah Hill is just one of the many celebrities that love skateboarding. Lil Wayne skates, Justin Bieber skates, and Tyler the Creator skates. Tyler the Creator is an interesting one, and I think there's something to be learned from Tyler the Creator that can be applied to parkour.
This is just a new jam by me and IJJ Fish. We signed up. We gonna take over the world, and this young music group is a blessing.
The reason being is because Tyler the Creator was a musician that built a cult following. And a lot of the culture that surrounded Tyler the Creator was skateboarding. It was the world of skateboarding. You would see him wearing Supreme clothing way before Supreme was really popular. I'm pretty sure there's a song where Tyler the Creator or One of Odd Future said something like, "I'm the reason you wear Supreme," which to me is super interesting. Unlike the rest of the celebrities that probably got into skateboarding because it's popular, Tyler the Creator helped propel skateboarding to get to that point. He was the true hipster. He was skateboarding way before it was very mainstream. And I'm talking about that era of like 2010. So after skateboarding had had its early boom in the 90s with Jackass. Or Jackass, I realise it's Jackass. Tyler was able to take what he was doing with music and art and tie it into the lifestyle of skateboarding. And as soon as Tyler the Creator became a massive celebrity, skateboarding's popularity just went mental. Supreme was a relatively unknown brand before Tyler the Creator came along. But just the other week, Supreme sold for $2 billion. What parkour really needs is someone like Tyler the Creator. It needs talented creatives to further expand what it means to be a freerunner. And by that, I mean musicians, artists, clothing designers, people that beyond just simply being good at parkour can curate a lifestyle that comes with being a freerunner. And in my opinion, parkour already has a very cool culture. And what I do with my videos is try and show the world what parkour culture is. A world full of creative people that love climbing rooftops and using architecture in an unconventional way. So whilst we might not see a Justin Bieber come along and do parkour anytime soon, there is a chance that a Tyler the Creator type individual could exist. Someone who knows how to portray the world of parkour in a creative and exciting manner. The next main reason why I think parkour isn't mainstream yet is down to the competition format. Currently, parkour competitions are still young and growing. They're all funded through the grassroots. There's no big financial backing to make it on the same level as what you would see in rock climbing or skateboarding. The typical competition structure at the moment is either skill, style, or speed. And yeah, we have Red Bull Art of Motion, which is a pretty big deal, but it's not the kind of thing that all the kids in the playground are talking about. It's cool for us, there's a few viral clips that might come out of it, but ultimately it just hasn't really elevated parkour that far. Speed competitions are slightly more gripping, especially the race format, but even then, I don't know, there's just something about it that stops me from really being that interested in it. I think it's probably because with speed, it's over so quickly, and the athletes will probably take the same, if not a very similar route. And I'm not saying that couldn't be popular to the right audience, but currently it's not really hit any super mainstream appeal. And then there is skill competitions.
Side of the tall wall, just to feel out the stride once.
Now, skill competitions, I do think, could potentially be very appealing to a wider audience. If there was some kind of obstacle course that was hard and it had stakes, even simply if it was just falling into water, which now I think of it is Ninja Warrior. If there was something like that, but was more focused on parkour and setting up these very hard, high-skilled parkour challenges, I could see that really working. You only have to look to, as I say, Ninja Warrior and Stora's water challenges.
Parkour athletes absolutely dominate Ninja Warrior, and there's a clear appetite for this format. But Ninja Warrior isn't really focused around parkour, it's a TV show.
The parkour skill competitions at the moment are cool, but I think they require more funding to make the overall presentation more engaging to a mainstream audience. Water. They need water. You need to see someone fall in water. So competitions are really important in making a sport mainstream. And it's because you create a culture of fans. Like if you think about football, the percentage of people who watch football versus play it is wildly disproportionate. Very few people who watch football actually do it. And parkour kind of needs that. Having people that simply just enjoy the sport and the athletes who participate is really key in making a sport bigger. Because without a mainstream competition, a sport like parkour very much stays inside its own bubble. The only people who know about all the top-end athletes are people who do parkour. Whereas if you think about skateboarding, I could name you big skaters even though I don't skate. But then finally, there is one parkour competition that has started to reach a more mainstream audience. And that is, as you can probably guess, World Chase Tag. Now, I've made a few videos on World Chase Tag, so I'm not going to go too much in depth with that. But there's something about the format of World Chase Tag that just makes it more enjoyable to watch than any other parkour competition. And that's because there's a game element. There's one person versus the other. There's tactics, there's strategy, and there's a clear game that is happening. It's so easy for a viewer to enjoy it because they don't need any technical understanding of the intricacies of the sport to enjoy two people running at each other. But that's all well and good that World Chase Tag is succeeding. But the thing that is really going to make parkour mainstream through competition is the moment that major sponsors start to get involved.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right.
If you see people like Nike and Adidas start sponsoring parkour competitions, designing the clothes and the shoes that are worn, that's when the real money comes in. And we are slowly starting to see big brands showing interest into parkour. DK, from my understanding, is sponsored by Adidas. And very recently, Josh from Stora worked with Reebok. So these are all really good signs that big businesses are starting to see the financial benefit of working with freerunners. And then the last thing that is holding parkour back, and that is accessibility. Parkour, in theory, is very accessible. Anyone could do it. But the problem with accessibility doesn't lie in parkour intrinsically, but rather through what the mainstream world does see of parkour. If you tell the average Joe that you do parkour, probably the first thing they'll say to you is, do you jump between rooftops? And you might reply to them saying, yeah, you have jumped a couple rooftops, but most of the time when you do parkour, it's on street level and it's all safe and blah, 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 blah. You try and explain that it's not just roof jumps. But this is the perception that the mainstream world have of parkour. They see it in the same way that I see base jumping. I see some geezer in a thin bit of fabric launching themselves off a mountain. Which when little 7-year-old Billy Boy tells his mum he wants to do parkour, she's not always too keen. And it's a shame because the reality is that parkour is very safe. Like, of course there is a danger element to parkour, but you could train parkour for 10 years and never go on a rooftop if you don't want to. A good majority of parkour is done below head height. But of course, Billy Boy's mum doesn't know that. All she knows is clips of people jumping between rooftops. And now look, this isn't anyone's fault, because part of parkour is rooftop training. And those clips are going to naturally be more exciting for a mainstream audience to watch. So how does that get solved? It's a pretty tricky situation, but I think there is a solution. I'm going to harp back to skateboarding again. I know I've spoke about it a lot, and I should definitely make a video on skateboarding's influence on parkour. But in early skate culture, there was a skateboarder called Lance Mountain. He was on the famous team Bones Brigade, which had Rodney Mullen and Tony Hawks. What made Lance stand out was that he wasn't that good at skateboarding. You wouldn't ever see Lance grinding down a 20-foot handrail, you would just see him cruising and having fun. But what this did was show skateboarding in a new light. It showed that you didn't need to be an adrenaline junkie to skate. It showed that you can just cruise around and have fun. Now look, I'm not saying we need a load of famous crap freerunners, but the principle behind that is super important. Showing parkour in a more down-to-earth fashion.
And I believe people like Stora, Team Fat, Wizzy Gang, Freerun Schlappen, all the people showing the lifestyle are really doing a good job at it.
Like, of course, you'll see their videos where they're doing massive stuff and rooftop stuff.
But a good bulk of their videos just shows them having fun doing simple parkour.
As I was saying in my last video about monkey style, the average person could probably envision themselves doing that far more than they could seeing themselves do a 20-foot roof jump. And the more that that side of parkour is shown, through videos or gyms and coaching, the more people might consider trying it themselves. As it shows that you don't need to be some insane athlete in order to do parkour. It shows that you can, if you want to, just go out and have fun.
And some people will be wondering, why do we care how we portray the sport? And like, you don't have to. But the reason this is so important to me is because parkour has given me so much in life. I mean, it's literally given me a job where I talk about parkour to you guys on YouTube. And not only that, it's just taught me so much about overcoming mental battles, etc. I've met incredible people, I have endless stories, and I've been all around the world doing it. And the things that parkour has given me, I want more people to experience. I really truly believe this sport is good for people. And it's a great, accessible way for them to develop themselves and build a strong character. And the only way for this lifestyle to reach more people is for it to be more mainstream.
Personally, I do think parkour will be mainstream. I can picture a future where it is as big as skateboarding. Now granted, we're a long way from that right now, but I can see it happening. And there's a few really big things that are happening right now that are going to put us closer to that point. World Chase Tag now has an American television show and has amassed over the years millions and millions of views. Stora are currently working on their parkour video game called Stora Parkour Pro, which I could see, much like Tony Hawk's did to skateboarding, could bring parkour to a wider audience. And then finally, and honestly, what I've seen with my channel. And I don't mean this in any kind of big-headed way. In fact, the opposite. I'm sure you guys are aware that I never really paint myself out to be a fantastic freerunner, as much as it pains me to say. But rather on this channel, I've just told stories about the world of parkour. And to see that so many people are interested in specifically our culture gives me a lot of hope for the future of our sport. It makes me see that there's almost this repressed appetite for content about parkour. And I can definitely see over the next few years, athletes and creatives coming along and sharing their story of their life in parkour. And as more of us start to think of ways that we can promote and push this culture, the more likely it is that it will go mainstream, so that we can piss off all the old heads. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. The parkour bucket list is out now. I've got new merch in the works as we speak. You can massively support me by picking one of them up, donating to me on Patreon, or using the sponsor link below. Peace.